like, comment, and subscribe. This edition of Hot Ones Caribbean is brought to you by Little Caesars.
You know you are a hot one.
I'm feeling like I'm nervous.
Temperature rise, beer vibes in this a hot one.
Papa, so just a pose, man. I have that little tight too as well.
Hot one. We're gonna spice it up like fire.
One thing I don't play bashful at all. Never bashful.
And we're gonna move on to the next amazing pepper sauce we have on the table here, which is the Caribbean flavors, the Sizzler. Sizzle up the taste buds a little bit now. Yes, Jaron Nurse, I am ready when you're ready, my brother.
Let's go.
If you need some milk, we have some Enjoy milk here for you. So if you need something to calm the palate a bit, because I feel I need something to calm the palate.
One thing I don't play bashful at all. Never bashful.
You're taking it.
Milk and butter at all, though.
In an intimate portrait in an ACTN interview, you mentioned that when you were younger, your mom had a dream, right? You're laughing. Yeah, your mom had a dream that she found the marijuana on you, and when she was praying for it, and it actually turned out to be true. Why were you selling marijuana in school, Jaron?
Honestly, I really had no reason to, but what I suffered with is a sickness called unforgiveness, and that also invited low self-esteem because of my story being adopted from 2 weeks old because my dad was hooked on drugs. My mom was mentally ill. So I was then adopted by my godparents. But in the community, people knowing my story would tell me all the hurtful things. Your father is a piper, your mother mad. All those sort of stuff. And it was hurtful, So because of that, I went out to school and searching for identity. I started doing wrong things, following the wrong company.
Right.
And that's when I started selling marijuana, because it was selling, making money.
Making money, so you needed that money then?
Not that I needed it, but I got to do a lot more things that without my parents knowing.
Right.
Which was wrong.
So how was that transition period?
It was easy, because I found something greater. Jesus is, as I would say, my superstar. But what I was also thankful for, even though in that transition God still allowed me to keep in contact. And in an uncommon way, whereas as much as I'm on the right path now, they would never feel out of place around me. Right. They would still show their respect though, they might smoke, some might struggle not to curse. But
pressure over there, boy.
Yeah.
A literal struggle not to curse.
Struggle? No, no, without my part. But I thank God that even though I was within that transition and I'm on a different path, God still allowed me to keep in contact. So that's why it will really hurt when I see, friends pass away and stuff like that, because I still consider them friends, and I keep them close because the message that God bless me with is also a message for them as well. So I can't keep them far and want to reach them. The closer you are to me, is the easier to reach.
This edition of Hot Ones Caribbean is brought to you by Andrews. This edition of Hot Ones Caribbean is brought to you by B-Mobile.
So Jaron, before we go to the next one, you mentioned that you found Jesus, and that was the transition. Can you tell me the story about how you found Jesus?
I found Jesus. It's a funny story because I was growing up in church. But it's also possible for you to grow up in church and you're far from Jesus. I tell people I was like a fish. When you're seasoning fish, you had to add salt, but a fish spent all his life living in salt water. And that was me growing up in church, but Jesus was not in me. Until I really had an encounter. It was a carnival camp, and that is when that experience, I'm gonna, yeah boy, Jaron, I'm not just real, but it's time to wake up. And yeah, that was the climax. Yeah.
And you mentioned that it was a hard time forgiving your father for what he did, your biological father for what he did to your family. So how did that moment feel when you picked up the phone to call him?
Well, it was a bit weird and awkward, but I know I had to do it because, you know, the Spirit of God spoke to me. I was in San Fernando Hill and he told me, hey, look how you call yourself a gospel singer, but you didn't forgive your father yet. And that shocked me. I got his number from my sister and I called him. That was the weirdest call for him as well.
What was he called like?
I was like, I never call him daddy. Never, ever. So I was like, yeah, Roger. He was like, yeah. I said, there's Jaron here. He said, Jaron? I said, I mean, forget about son named Jaron. He said, no, just weird that you would call me. I said, well, yeah, I just call you to tell you that I love you and I forgive you for everything that you know, the way I was thinking towards you and stuff like that. And he said, all right, we had a talk. And that's how that happened. But what I thank God for that, forgiveness is never for them. It's for us. It's to make us a better person. And that is when God really blessed me with songs like Caribbean Christian about 2 weeks after and started traveling and things. So unforgiveness and things that's just really hinder you as an individual. But I thank God, you know, I tell people I had so much hate in me. I fell in love with hate. You know, I could have been an advocate for unforgiveness because I was like unforgiveness permanent secretary.
This edition of Hot Ones Caribbean is brought to you by the Ministry of Tourism, Culture and the Arts, Trinidad and Tobago. This edition of Hot Ones Caribbean is brought to you by Flow. Like, comment, and subscribe.
You know you are a hot one. We are lime, we are laugh, we are chat, we no chill, we are hot one.